This is great. Thanks for taking us to this. What's the name of this cafe? The Malabia?
Malabia.
What is Malabia? What is
Malabia is a kind of, I wouldn't say a porridge, but it's some kind of a dessert. It's like really, really tasty.
Great.
It's one of the best Malabis you can find in Tel Aviv.
Okay. Well, it's not anywhere that we're sitting. We're sitting in the heart of
We're sitting in the heart of Florentine. A lot of people compare Florentine to Williamsburg because it's you have here, a lot of hipsters, and it's a very outgoing neighborhood. It's like it's a really cool place to live. And like any other neighborhood, who is becoming trendy, you have a lot of you have a process of gentrification. So a lot of the old people who used to live in the neighborhood, because of the economic process and because there's a lot of new people who are coming to this neighborhood, so it's changing. But still, it's a great place to live in Tel Aviv.
So it's interesting, it's changing. So there was a group that came before, and then it turned into something else, and then into something else. So layer upon layer upon layer.
Yeah, it's the story of Israel. It's the story of Tel Aviv. This is exactly what's happening, and this is the thing that I love the most about Tel Aviv, because it's one of the most multicultural places that I ever, experienced in my life. And when you think about a big city, about a global city, it's a place where you have a lot of different people and different values and different cultures and different religions and different languages. And the best thing about Tel Aviv and any other great city is that, you can start walking on the beach, from Jaffa to the north port of Tel Aviv. And the thing is that, like, every 10 minutes you will find different people and different and a different vibe and different languages and different atmosphere. And this is what makes Tel Aviv such a great place, because every 10 minutes something is like changing. And I think it's amazing.
That I agree with you 100%, and the reason we're speaking to you is because you really have your hand on the pulse of Tel Aviv, and we're going to get to that in a minute, because I think we're getting ahead of ourselves, because before we talk about Tel Aviv, let's talk about you. Who is Erez? Where did you come from, and how did you end up in Tel Aviv, and how did you end up with this lens that you have on Tel Aviv?
Well, I was born in Haifa. I would say that Haifa is probably one of the most sane places in Israel. It's like a really, really, it's when you speak about coexistence, you speak about Haifa. But also Haifa, it's one of the most boring places in Israel. I hate to say it, but it's, having said that, it's a beautiful place. And I learned photography, I learned international relations, I learned political communication in the Hebrew University. And ever since I remember that I told myself that when I wouldn't have enough time and enough money, I would probably hop on the first jet plane and I would go and explore the world. And this is exactly what I did. And the thing is that, while I was traveling, not a lot of people realized that I'm coming from Israel. And that is probably because of my accent.
Where's your accent from?
Which I acquired after watching endless episodes of Seinfeld and Friends. And the thing is that, while you were traveling in the world, what is the first question that probably somebody is going to ask you after you have like a conversation of like 5 minutes? Where are you from?
Right.
And when I told people that I'm coming from Israel, you could actually see how their facial expressions start to change. You're coming from Israel. Isn't it a place where people are getting exploded all the time?
What years was this when you were traveling?
It was during when I was a student in the Hebrew U. I went I've been all over the world. I've been to India several times. I've been to Europe. I've been to the States. And the thing is that, it's, I felt that, people don't get what Tel Aviv and what Israel is all about. And I heard so many misconceptions about Israel and about Tel Aviv, and I remember that I told myself that if I had the ability to actually, take those people back with me to Israel so they can see, in their own eyes what Israel and Tel Aviv is all about, I don't know, maybe, just maybe I will be able to change those misconceptions. And in 2012, I stumbled upon Humans of New York. And it was like an eureka moment for me, because I remember that, this is exactly what I need to do if I want to show the diversity, and if I want to show the multiculturalism, and if I want to show, the different side of Tel Aviv and Israel. And I started, walking in the streets of Tel Aviv with my camera, And it was challenging in the beginning because, you have to get outside of your comfort zone. You're approaching total strangers and you start to ask them personal questions about their life. And in the beginning,
Was this part of your nature? Are you an outgoing person, or is this something you had to
I'm
push
pretty much outgoing, but it's hard because you don't have a clue what will be the answers of people you're going to meet, and it's challenging, but it's amazing because if you do it in a very if you come in a humble way and you do it in a genuine way, people will open their hearts for you and they will tell you stories that you couldn't hear like in any other encounter.
This is really one of those cool neighborhoods that we have in Tel Aviv. It seems that everybody wants to be in Florentin.
I live in this neighborhood for I think almost 9 years. And as I told you in the beginning, it's changed dramatically, but it's still a cool place. It's still a place like, you feel how much vibrant this neighborhood really is. You have a lot of young people over here. You have a lot of French people who decided to move to live in Florentin. You have a lot of people, who just, got released from the army. And, we're speaking about like a year ago, they're supposed to, go to India and coming back from India and they're starting their life in Tel Aviv. And it's a very, very, you speak a lot about the melting pot that you have in Israel, but it's a cool melting pot. Mm-hmm. It's not something that, something is like trying to have only one model. You have a lot of people and a lot of different views and a lot of different point of views. And they're all mixing up in Florence.
That's interesting because sometimes we have a perception about Tel Aviv that it's a particular way, let's say, juxtaposed to Jerusalem, which is a different way. But here you're saying that there's a multi-layeredness even to Tel Aviv?
This is the cool thing about, in Florentin. Even in Tel Aviv, I remember that one of the things that when I moved to Tel Aviv, in the beginning, I was a little bit, afraid. It was like, it was the first time, I came to Tel Aviv. It felt a little bit like, I remember that I was like sitting in Florentin or sitting in Rothschild Boulevard on a bench and drinking my coffee. And I was thinking to myself, I was just, exploring, and seeing the people who were passing by. And it felt like, like you had like an extra agency that decided to close her doors. And they told everybody, go and rumble the streets. And this is the feeling because you have so many different people and different outlooks and different vibes. And this is what makes, Florentin makes Tel Aviv such a cool place. Mm-hmm. And I think this is one of the main differences between Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. In Tel Aviv, you can feel the diversity. In Jerusalem, you have diversity, but it's like every social group, they're like in their own neighborhood. In Tel Aviv, you have the feeling that you have this, this sizzling melting pot. And you can say that in Tel Aviv, you feel that you can do whatever you want and nobody will make a fuss about it. Mm-hmm. If you will be in Jerusalem, you can feel there's a tension. You can feel that there's something. You can feel the history. You can feel there is some kind of dividance, between different social groups and between religion and between different people. But in Tel Aviv, you don't feel that. You don't feel that. But on the other hand, I can say that in Jerusalem, what you see is what you get. You see, people are really, you have this in Hebrew. You have this. It's not Hebrew. It's even Yiddish. Tachlis, and I call it the Tachlis approach, where Israelis are like in your face, and people will tell you whatever they think, mm-hmm. and they would not go around the bush, and you can actually see that vibe is much more. You can feel that more in Jerusalem than in Tel Aviv.
So with this neighborhood, you see what you get. You get what you see in Jerusalem, and here it's multi-layered. You don't always know what you're getting. When you came 9 years ago to the neighborhood, how is it different than it is today? Was it more of a particular kind of neighborhood, or was it already changing? I
think it started, you had less families in Florentin. And today you have a lot of families and a lot of kids. And they built, like a new school and a new JCC, which is amazing. And the neighborhood...
here it's just a CC. Yeah, okay, sorry.
No, you're right. It's only a CC and community center. And the thing is that, it's changing because, the thing is, Florentin, we spoke about layers. You have a lot of layers in Florentin. You have the old population who used to live here, who came from Saloniki, who came from Greece, 70, 80 years ago. You have students, you have families right now, you have new people who decided to come and live in Florentine. And Florentine, it's like you can say it's like a little bit. I would say that Florentine is a little bit like a microcosmos of Israel, and it's a place where you have you have all aspects of Israeli society. You have Ashkenazim and Mizrahim, Russian people who immigrated from Russia, French Jews. You have Arabs. You have Christians. You have the LGBTQ community who live in Florentine, and you can feel that diversity. And this is what makes Florentine such a cool place.
Okay. So, Erez, how do you choose your subjects? You've met so many people.
Well, it's I actually have more than 1,500 stories of different people in Tel Aviv and in Israel. And the thing is that luckily enough, Tel Aviv is a very outgoing place. So it's really easy to start a conversation with somebody. You just something about his vibe, something about his appearance. It could be like a special earring or special outfit, and you just start from there and start to have a conversation. And
have you ever started to walk towards someone and then changed your mind because something happened, or?
It's usually you take a leap of faith and you just approach people. And one of the things is that never approach somebody from the back. Always approach somebody from where you can actually see you and see your eyes. So it's very crucial. And you just start a conversation and you tell them about the project, and you tell them that they have something like really interesting in them, and I would really love to tell their story. And I can tell you that most of the people will be most of the people in Tel Aviv, I can say are easygoing and they will go along.
Cool.
And actually I had like two places in Tel Aviv where I actually almost had my camera broken.
Oh.
It was in the old central bus station in Tel Aviv. It's a little bit sketchy place, and people were a little bit afraid that I was walking there with my camera. But because I have the smile, I managed to pull that off.
With the 1,500 stories that you've heard in this particular project, I guess the two questions are: one, is there a story, an image that stands out in your mind as being, I wouldn't say the most interesting, but let's say one of the most interesting stories you remember? That's one question. The second question is there a story of the thousands that you've taken, the stories, the photos you've taken, the stories you've heard, the people you've met, that if you were to choose one story that best represented what you hoped to achieve with this project, what would that be?
Well, that's a really tough question. It's like really hard to pinpoint only one picture. Mm-hmm. But I can tell you that it's really hard, because some of the pictures I can tell that it was really amazing to take because of the personal connection that I made with the person that I took the picture with, and some of the picture I like the most because of the composition. So it's kind of a mixture. But I can tell you that there are like two pictures that I say that had like this huge effect, and pictures that actually tell a story about Israel and about Tel Aviv. And I can tell you that one of the picture is a picture I took in Monterey Beach. It's actually like 2 kilometers from here, and it's a picture where you can see there 3 Muslim ladies sitting on the beach. And on the background, you have this probably a tourist or an Israeli girl with a bikini, and all the Muslim ladies. The composition is beautiful, and you can see the Muslim ladies. They're wearing their niqab and hijab, and like this garment, and the contrast between the girl in the bikini and the Muslim ladies. You can see them from the back, and you can see the back of of the girl with the bikini. And there's something about that picture that actually says that, it's actually described the freedom of religion and the freedom of expression that you have in Israel, and mainly that you have in Tel Aviv. And it's a beautiful picture because just remember that like 5 years ago, 6 years ago, you had a lot of terrorist activism in France. And you had the Charlie Hebdo terrorist attack, and you had the attack on the kosher supermarket.
Sure.
And during that time, in the French Riviera, the French government decided to have this decree that actually said that they banned burkini, and so Muslim lady couldn't walk, couldn't go to the beach, with burkini. And let's go back to Israel. Since the establishment of the State of Israel, we had to deal, with a lot of security threats and terrorist attacks, and never, we never even contemplated about, banning burkini, niqab, hijab, or any other garment. So for me, this picture actually tells you the story that you have in Tel Aviv and in Israel, that you have the freedom to be yourself, and you have the freedom of religion and freedom from religion, and you have the ability to express yourself. And it's a beautiful picture.
Wow, great. Clearly, it doesn't. Not that you were trying to say this, but it obviously doesn't mean that everything's perfect here. And yet,
it's far from it.
Yeah,
nothing. Israel is not perfect.
Sure.
And I always tell myself, in this project, I'm showing the good side, and I'm showing, even the bad sides, and I'm showing the reality the way it is. Because I remember that I promised myself that during this project, I'm not the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, I'm not the Ministry of the Prime Minister office, I'm not the Ministry of Tourism. I'm going to show the reality the way it is, and I'm going to let other people connect the dots for themselves. And when you're showing the reality the way it is, I think that people, first of all, you give it a lot of credibility. And when people see the complexity that you have in a place like Israel and Tel Aviv, they actually, tell themselves, wow, it's amazing, it's interesting how they manage, to, still have a democracy with all this complexity they're actually facing. Because it's really easy to speak about democracy and civil rights when you're you're in a university, in the air condition, and you're out of the context of the place. But it's much harder when you're actually living in a place like this.
Sure. Okay, so that's the easier of the two questions, because that's from a professional macro level, the project. What about for Erez? What has been for you the most interesting, or to make it easier, one of the most interesting stories or photos or moments that you remember?
So I can tell you that in the beginning, my aim in this project is actually, to better inform and to better educate people, and so they will realize that, Tel Aviv is a cool place. And one of the pictures that I took in the beginning was a picture of the grandkids of a Holocaust survivor who decided to tattoo their grandfather Auschwitz number on their wrists. And when you look at that picture, you see there's a tiny diamond near the number, because the name of the grandfather, his last name was Diamant, and in German, Diamant means diamond. And I published that picture on the International Memorial Day of the Holocaust, and it went viral. It reached more than 1 million people from across the world. And one of the most moving things was that I got a lot of messages from the Arab and Muslim world, even from people, from Iran and Pakistan, who told me, listen, this is the first time we ever heard about the Holocaust, and this is the first time we realized why the State of Israel was established. And I was really moved because, you just need to have, a good picture and a good story, and if you have a good story and a good picture, and you have that kind of a synergy, you have the ability to actually to engage with people, and to touch their hearts and to tell a story. And in my eyes, it's amazing that I was able to show a different side of Israel and Tel Aviv.
Wow, that's great. It's a very powerful story. And it's great that you're able to tell the story out there. We're all trying our own way to help people engage with this place and ask them why do they care? What's their connection? But it's nice to be able to also ask ourselves, why do we care? What's our connection? And to see it through your eyes is amazing. Erez, thanks so much on such a hot day here in Tel Aviv for joining us. And it really was a pleasure. I know that all of Ari Katz's friends in California are just really excited to have had the opportunity to spend some time with you in Tel Aviv and see Tel Aviv through your eyes.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.